Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Reacts. And on today's episode, we have Canada being completely awful to their First Nations, to their indigenous populations, and their own courts find that they owe billions after making a mockery of a treaty deal that their Supreme Court ruled. And they basically urged the federal and Ontario provincial governments to make payouts after dishonorably neglecting a 174-year-old treaty deal that they signed with Indigenous nations. And what it boils down to is the Canadian government just refuses to honor a treaty that was signed with the Indigenous nation, the Anishinaabe. And what happened is effectively they traded for the lands that the people lived on. The agreement. So the case centered around a treaty that was signed in 1850 between the British Crown and a group of Anishinaabe nations on the shores of Huron and Superior, known as Robinson Treaties. The agreements, which covered 35,700 square miles or 92,400 square kilometers of land, included an augmentation clause that promised to increase annual payments from time to time as the land generated more wealth, if and when that payment could be made without the Crown incurring a loss. So that's a really important little stipulation there because, Colin, can you guess what happened in those 174 years?
Well, the key thing is the vagueness of the language, such as time from time and without incurring a loss. What ends up happening with these Robinson treaties, as they're called, is about 24 years in 1874, the Crown, specifically the province of Ontario, I believe, decides that paying the Indigenous people anything counts as incurring a loss. So they cap the annual payment at $4 a person. That's $4 per tribal member to be paid as exactly $4 to each tribal member every year, and refuse to ever increase it. Basically stating that, time to time means that eventually or never.
Well, and the key point that the courts really highlight on is the fact that the sum was capped in 1974 to $4 a person,
Yeah,
and that it's
1874.
effectively a mockery of the Crown's treaty promise because
Yeah.
they capped it and never increased it, even though the companies in this region, both in terms of the fisheries but also the mineral extraction, which in this region was really, really profitable, generated immense profits for the companies and large revenues for the governments. And the fact that they capped it at $4 and never increased it is an insult, and it's
Yeah.
one of those things where it was done out of bad nature. It was foul nature. It was
Yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't done in
bad,
good nature.
it was bad faith negotiating.
Bad faith. That's the right one. Thank you.
Yeah. And to quote one of the justices on this case, no party doubts that the Crown was able to increase the annuities beyond $4 per person without incurring a loss, and that it should have exercised its discretion to do so. Basically, there is absolutely no math and no logic to the argument of we couldn't afford to pay them more, so we didn't.
Oh no, it got even better.
Because that's a lie. They had the means to do so. They had the means to pay them bounds more money.
It gets even better in my opinion because a lot of things that people don't realize, and the same goes for the United States here, is it's not a person to government interaction or treaty, it's a nation to nation. It is the same as if you signed a treaty with a foreign nation. So these nation to nation agreements are an alliance of equals. The court then called on the Crown to return the foundations of the treaty and to engage the honor of the Crown by increasing the payments, and failure to do so would be patently dishonorable. And it just, such harsh words. And part of the reason why this is such a patent issue and why it's such a huge problem is the lands that these tribes lived on was minerally extremely wealthy. I mean, people made immense wealth by taking advantage of them and
Yeah.
forcing them to sign these treaties. And one of the long-standing effects of that is that they are historically and continuously economically disadvantaged. I mean, employment rates on the tribal reserves are significantly lower than anywhere else. I mean, in Canada, it's almost a 20% difference. They're
Yeah.
living below the poverty line, and it's not. It people mistakenly or maybe falsely attribute that to a certain form of laziness or maybe other racial attributes, which is patently false. It boils down to opportunity cost and education. There's not a lot of money being circulated in these communities. There's no money to be shared, to be earned. And what's interesting though about this is the ruling doesn't have any award settlement or financial art awards. And this is important because the superior Anishinaabe argued that they were owed 126 billion in back payments.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the funny things with all that too is the argument from Ontario was that over the course of the last 150 years that they've been dealing with with this treaty and with this cap, is that they've spent $4.2 billion industrializing the land and making it profitable, and that cost is so great it's prohibited them from making any money. 4.2. It's just like one of the things there is like 4.2 billion when you owe 126 billion.
Yeah, it's a slap
that
in
that
the
is a
face.
hilariously bad argument. And so what the court's done, sorry to like talk over you, Justin,
No, you're good.
but what's the court done is instead of demanding that money be paid back immediately, what they've done is they've said, you, the state of Ontario, have 6 months, or province of Ontario, right? Whatever. I'm an American. It's all states. You, the province of Ontario, have 6 months to reach a settlement with the indigenous tribes for all the money you've stole from them, or the court's going to step in and mandate that you pay.
Probably all of it, if I had to
Yep.
assume. But yeah,
Yeah. And
it.
so
Oh.
Ontario's got 6 months to wheel and deal its way out of, $126 billion bill.
And for the tribes, like, this is huge. This is life-changing money. I mean, it's gonna really impact entire communities and generations of people living, because you have multiple First Nations in this region that were effectively coerced out of their lands. And to people saying they signed the treaty themselves, a lot of times it wasn't even the tribal chiefs, it wasn't tribal council, it was
But
some person claiming to be a tribal representative. But for both Canada and the United States, if you claim to be on behalf of the tribe, that was as good as you being the tribal chief in their eyes.
yeah.
So it
And
wasn't done in good faith.
but yeah, and even all of that aside, taking the treaty as it exists, Ontario and Canada have dishonored the treaty by refusing the augmentation clause for over a century. Like, there's absolutely no reason that let's just call it the lease would stay the same for 150 years when inflation has done so much to the value of 4 Canadian dollars.
Yeah,
Like,
4 Canadian, that's a slap.
yeah, yeah, like it's not like that's worth the same amount that it was in 1874 when it would probably have been about the equivalent of several weeks' wages.
Yeah.
You know, like that would have been decent money, but not great. And it's now what, a hot dog at best.
God.
So like there is no excuse for it being this disrespected, regardless of how that treaty got signed. The fact that it was ignored to this level is absolutely ridiculous. And
Yeah. But that's, I think, a great point for us to wrap up on this one. It's a one of the few wins that you see First Nations receiving, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I smell a part two coming in the near future here, depending on how this plays out. But, we talk a lot about the United States and their downfalls. Canada is in the exact same boat. As much as they like to play up their relations, they also signed very predatory deals with their First Nations, and we're finally seeing the ramifications of that. So thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, let us know down below, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.